Want to add 100K a month to your revenue without another live launch, ads, or posting more content? I'm giving you the insider look at how, over the last 5 years, I've developed a compounding decision content system that uses just 4 pieces of content a week to add 100K of new revenue to your business. So let's get real. Now, hey, and welcome back to the Business Real Talk. I am getting down and dirty on one of my favorite topics ever, which is understanding how to leverage this simple but decision based content system that has added over 100K plus of revenue every single month to our business. Now, let's dive into it and just jump in by understanding what it is you really want in your business. Now, we know that your goal right now is that you want thought leadership. You want the ability to stand on stages and be able to share the true value of what you bring to the table and bring that to the masses. And we also understand that you want to create brand awareness that allows more people to know who you are and what it is you really do. And ultimately, you want that because you want to drive more ROI. You want sales revenue, you want leads, you want traffic, you want the ability to be able to grow a highly successful business. Now, right now, you're likely posting consistently all over, maybe on TikTok, maybe on Instagram, maybe on Facebook, maybe in all of the places. And maybe you're using daily themed content like we've all been taught before, things like content pillars and a content calendar. But I'm going to give it to you straight. We've been lied to. We've been made to believe that posting content is a strategy, that if we just keep sharing more valuable information, people will buy. And this idea of more content has taken over. And we see this in the ads that we're fed where it says 500 content ideas or how to create 90 pieces of content a week or here's how we create 50 pieces of content in an hour. The problem is all of the tactics you're applying and learning right now are built with the wrong intention in mind. It's been built for the influencer, optimizing for attention, or it's been optimized to stay top of mind for the run of the mill providers and digital marketers who are here one day and gone the next. But you're not an influencer, and your transformative services are responsible for your revenue and your legacy. You're a thought leader, you're running a successful business, and your content should be a reflection of that. But we're going to keep it real because what you really need to have in order to have an effective content strategy that drives sales in your business while increasing your thought leadership and impact is one single thing. It's having a content strategy that prioritizes and optimizes for decisions. That's what I call the compounding decision formula. Because when we optimize for decisions, your business sees a positive ROI and the results that we can take to the bank. Results like adding 100K a month to your revenue without a single launch, a fancy funnel, or ads, or posting just 3 to 5 times a week and getting speaking engagements, requests for podcasts, summits, etc., to showcase your thought leadership. Inbound leads, people you've never met before who are suddenly asking to work with you in your 25K mastermind, ready to pay to work in close proximity with you. These are the actual results that myself and my clients have experienced firsthand from this compounding decision content strategy that I'm going to share with you here today. So, in order to understand truly what drives a successful content system and strategy, you first need to understand what the difference between your tactics and your strategies and your systems really are. Because, especially when it comes to content, so often we're deploying tactics before we have a strategy. And we're finding that we may have a strategy, but it's not supported through a system that can be replicated and outsourced to others to further support that. So let's break it all down so you can clearly understand where the tactics lie, where the strategy lies, and where the system lies. So, first and foremost, a simple definition of a tactic is what are the specific actions or tools that we're using to execute on a content strategy. So, some examples of tactics you may be deploying in your business right now might be that you're writing blog posts or you're creating weekly video content or you're posting tips, tricks, and answering questions on TikTok or Instagram. These are all the baseline for having a tactic to deploy against a strategy. So, with that in mind, let's talk about the strategy, the main event of what's actually going to drive the actual results you want in your business. So when we look at strategy, it's like the overarching plan, the framework that's going to guide the creation, the distribution, and the management of your content, specifically with a specific business goal in mind. So we now know that to create an effective strategy, it's based around what intent, what business goal am I looking to achieve? From there, the tactics are going to be what drives that for us. So, this might include us defining the target audience, identifying their needs and preferences, determining the key messages, themes, the strategy, the outlining of those tactics and channels that we're going to use. All of those get housed within the strategy. So, a content strategy is ultimately what's going to provide direction and coherence to all of your content efforts, ensuring that your content is actually aligning with your brand voice, with your values, with your objectives, and it's actually driving results for your business. So it's going to encompass things like content planning, creation, publication, promotion, and measurement. It's all housed within our content strategy. So things that go into our content strategy might be things like positioning yourself as an industry thought leader by using a variety of content styles such as articles, social media content, speaking engagements, etc. Those are things that would go within our content strategy. Another example might be that we're talking about using a leveraged mix of owned, earned, and paid media channels so that we can reach our target audience and maximize engagement. Those are two things you might see housed within your content strategy, which leads us to our content system. Now, our content system is ultimately what brings that all together, what takes all of those components and brings them together. It's the structured process and infrastructure for creating and managing and distributing that content. Okay. So it's going to include everything from the tools, the workflows, the rules, the responsibilities, the content production, the delivery, the technology stack, all of the things that go into this. So it's going to allow you to streamline your content operations, improving your collaboration among team members, maintaining the content quality and consistency, and scaling those content productions to meet the growing demands. This is ultimately, as a scaling business, where your biggest opportunity point is, because when you have a content system, you can offload that to another team member. So when I tell people that you absolutely can outsource or offload your marketing, your content marketing to somebody else on your team, that is exactly how, is by having a content system. So a great way to look at this is think of building content as like a house. Your tactics are you choosing the right tools for each of the tasks. So just like a builder is going to select specific tools, like their hammers, their drills, their saws, like all the different things they need within that construction in order to really apply, same thing goes inside of our content. Okay. We're going to look at the appropriate things we need that are going to allow us to do that. So writing blog posts, creating social media graphics, sending personalized emails, those are all tactical. They're the tools that we can apply to the strategy that we've created. With that being said, the strategy itself is much like the architectural blueprint for the entire project. So when you go build a house, what's the first thing that people do? They're going to go get a architectural blueprint that's going to give us the detailed plan for how to construct that house. It's going to take into consideration the size, the shapes, the where things go, et cetera, et cetera. We would never go build a house with just a couple of nails and some wood and just see where it goes. We're not going to just put things up and see what happens. But so many of you are operating in a sense like you're building a house without the architectural blueprint because you don't have the strategy that guides all of those pieces. So, similar to how we mentioned how this works in a house, again, that's the target audience, the messaging, all of the things that guide as a roadmap to all of your content efforts so that we can ensure the alignment with your objectives and the goals that we have in mind. And your content system is much like you bringing in a construction crew. So you're building that house. We now understand that the tools, having the right tools for building that house, are our tactics. Our content strategy, so the strategy that we create, is much like the blueprint, the architectural blueprint that really guides the entire project to ensure that everything's fitting into place and working together to produce the result. And our content system is like us bringing in a construction crew and having a workflow process, right? Just like a construction crew comes in and they work together to know who's taking care of what according to that blueprint we've created, a content system is doing something very similar. It's creating that structured processes, the workflows, the roles, the tools that are used to create, manage, and distribute that content efficiently and effectively. So on our team, our content system really encompasses understanding that I'm creating the content and Julia, who's on my team, is then taking that content and breaking it down into smaller pieces. She knows exactly where to share it, how to share it, what it includes, what we're driving people to, because every single piece of that puzzle is narrowed in on inside of our content system. So the content system literally brings that piece all together. All three are going to play a integral role in the success of your business, but without having that effective content strategy, you're going to keep running in circles. It's the key to successfully leveraging content that brings in an ROI. So let's jump into what are the key pieces that we need in order to create a successful content strategy. So I'm going to break down for you after spending nearly 20 years in marketing and over the last 13 years working with clients. These are the four things that your content strategy needs. So make sure you grab a pen and paper and write this down because this is absolutely vital. Number one is that it needs to be evergreen. If you are looking to grow a successful scaled business, you need to stop asking people to buy on your timeline. People are moving through their decision making process in an evergreen state where they come in when they're ready to make purchasing decisions. If you are not leveraging an evergreen content system that supports them when they're ready to make decisions, you are leaving hundreds of thousands, if not millions, on the table right now. So ultimately, I see a lot of people leveraging launch content strategy, something that's really tied to a launch that you're having. So every week, you have a different offer that you're sharing, you have a different masterclass that you're bringing people to, which means if I'm coming in between one of these cycles and I find that that's not the right fit for me right now, I'm no longer going to say, yes, you're the right person for me. Ultimately, our goal, if we are looking to help people make decisions, say yes without any hesitation, without any roadblocks, we need to ensure that our content strategy meets people exactly where they're at. And having an evergreen strategy is one of the biggest features to allowing people to make the fastest and easiest decisions. Now, the second thing I want to talk about is understanding trigger points. So, one of the things that I talk about all the time and what really makes our approach so innovative is that we acknowledge that the underlying and underpinning pieces are that people have different reasons for making purchasing decisions. So if you think about it, we have subconscious and conscious things that drive our actions to make a decision ultimately. So I always tell the story that if I were to go buy shoes tomorrow, Nike shoes, I'm buying them because I believe they're going to make me run faster. My daughter buys them because she believes that they're a status symbol and they're what's going to make her look cool at school. Those are all different reasons. They're different triggers, both subconscious and consciously, that are driving my action. So inside of your business, you have dozens of different demand angles or trigger points that your prospective clients have that are making them make different purchasing decisions. It's our job as a business owner to understand those different trigger points, acknowledge them, and address them through our content system. And I'll explain to you exactly how we do this inside of our business and why this is so pivotal to having a weekly client acquisition process that just uses 3 to 4 pieces of content. Now that we understand that second piece of knowing that we need to know the different trigger points that drive people to make purchasing decisions, the third piece is knowing that it's based in decisions. So we talked a lot about this already, but the key to having an effective content strategy is to understand what we're really optimizing for. What is the intent behind our content? In my case, what I realized after dozens of years of being frustrated that I was getting people who said, this sounds great, or cheering me on, but never actually making purchasing decisions, was that what I ultimately wanted when it came to my content was I wanted people to be able to make a decision. I wanted it to be able to support them in that selling process so that when they got on a call with me, they'd already made up most of their mind that they were ready to work with me. You see me talk about this all the time, but ultimately understanding the power behind having decision-based intent is ultimately what drove so much of the success in my business. And I say this single-handedly because it was a huge shift in how I thought, how I operated, and how I spoke to my audience when I realized what I ultimately wanted was for people to come into my world and make decisions. So when you recognize that intent is one of the biggest drivers behind success, you realize that ultimately what we're looking for is for people to make decisions. So you understand that when we're targeting high intent leads, their intent is to make a decision. So ultimately, we understand their intent and we understand our intent, because our intent is we want people to be able to say yes as quickly as possible. And the way that they do that is be able to have the information that allows them to make that decision. So, that third point is really understanding decision based intent behind the content strategy and setting up everything we do in order to achieve that. Now, the fourth and final piece that I think a lot of people skip over, and it's what makes scaling so expensive, is not acknowledging the fact that your content system should also be doing what we call validate and scale. So ultimately, when you think about it, we're not only using content to warm up our audience and move that warm audience to a decision, we're also using it to bring in new leads, new people into our world. So, what we want to be able to do is do that as effectively as possible. So, rather than me to create all this amazing and incredible content for my warm audience, but then when it comes to bringing in new cold audiences, I'm running ads and testing copy and doing all this new stuff. Instead, what I'm doing is recognizing and acknowledging the fact that I can take the content that I've created throughout my content system and apply this at scale. So, what we're doing is we're testing the different angles, the different approaches, the different content that wins in our warm audiences, and then taking that and using it at scale with cold audiences. This allows us to move much faster and eliminates a lot of the spend that happens when it comes to scaling itself. So, now that you understand the four key pieces to a successful content strategy, let's jump into what it actually looks like to use what we call the compounding decision content system. So, I want you to think for a second. Imagine that next week you could sit down, you could create just 3 to 4 pieces of evergreen content that uses a compounding effect and it moves people through that decision making process. So, at the end of every single week, you're not only bringing in new leads into your business, but you're moving the leads who are currently sitting in your world to make a decision week in and week out. What does that change in your business? I want you to think realistically, if every single week, without a launch, without expensive ads, without new tech and funnels, you just leveraged 3 to 4 pieces of content that drove people to make decisions, raise their hands, say, yes, I'm ready to work with you. How would your business change? That's exactly what we did in our business and what we've deployed for our clients so that they can leverage this compounding decision content system. So let me break down for you the formula behind what really makes this so effective. So first things first is knowing and speaking to one single angle. So I mentioned previously the 4 key components behind the content strategy. And one of the things I shared with you is understanding the different trigger points. So oftentimes what I see people do when it comes to sitting down and creating content is they're kind of creating content from a place of inspiration. So maybe today they're talking about new leads, and tomorrow they're talking about sales systems, and the next day they're talking about sales calls, and the day after that they're talking about content, and every day it's something new. Now, in your mind, when you're sitting down to create that content, there's probably a thread, right? There's something that's moving you from one thing to the other. Or again, you're just creating content based on no strategy at all. You're just throwing it out there and putting things there. Either way, what I want you to understand is when it comes to people making decisions, we want to create a singular process. So each week, what myself and my clients do is we take from our list of really confirmed and validated buying triggers and we focus on one single angle. What this is doing is it's allowing us to create a compounding effect through that single content angle. Ultimately, what this is doing is it's allowing people to make micro decisions throughout the process, all in line with one single angle. So, let me give you an example. Let's say that you're a trauma informed coach and you work with people to overcome the traumas in their lives. Now, one of the angles, those buying triggers that we might tackle is that somebody that comes to you is ultimately looking to overcome their trauma so they can be more productive at work and get the promotion that they've been working towards. I'm going to spend the entire week speaking to that specific trigger point and taking people along that process so that they can ultimately make a decision that this is exactly who I want to work with. This is allowing people to really make micro decisions, but ultimately also follow that pathway and be able to stay on your line of thinking throughout the week. Now, the second piece of the formula is a conversion event. Whether you've realized it or not, this podcast is my conversion event. So, what I'm doing is leveraging a weekly podcast episode to really create my conversions. So, in doing so, what this allows me to do is really recognize that this is where I'm giving all of the nitty gritty. I'm not needing to create tons of content because this podcast acts as my conversion event. It's giving all the details, all the pieces of the puzzle that allows someone to effectively make a decision. So when I send out my podcast, somebody can come in, listen to this single episode, and make a decision because this was the trigger point that they really needed to be spoken to that allows them to say, yes, this is exactly who I need to work with. So our clients leverage a conversion event that works best for them. It might be a podcast episode, it might be a blog post, it might be a written piece of content, it might be a Facebook Live. There's a variety of different ways to do this. And it's ultimately understanding that it has more to do with the strategy than the tactic we deploy behind that. Now, the third and final piece of the puzzle is knowing and understanding that we drive interest. One of the biggest mistakes I see people make when it comes to their content is that they don't understand the purpose behind each piece of content. When it comes to our content system, what we acknowledge is that our conversion event, the podcast episode in this case, is ultimately what we want to drive the most people to because it's where we're focusing our conversion process towards. So that means all of the rest of the content I'm creating around this week is all driving people to this singular event. So I tell my clients all the time the goal really should have always been that we're only spending 20% of our time creating content and 80% of our time actually promoting that content. So for us and our clients, what we focus on doing is creating that conversion event. Again, this podcast as the example, and then leveraging those ultimate supplementary pieces of content to drive people to that. So in our case, you'll notice that throughout the week, all of our other content pieces are ultimately setting people up for this singular event. What this does is sets our clients up to make fast decisions and being able to pre-sell themselves throughout the process because we're taking them on this very strategic and methodical process of really mimicking their decisions, allowing them to understand and see the full picture, and really acknowledging that our content is set up to create conversions. This is the power behind our Easy Yes method. Every single thing we do is meant to build within each other and help support that end game goal of really creating decisions within your client acquisition process and ultimately getting your clients amazing success and setting you up for scale. So if you're tired of working so hard for the success you want and you want to be able to have the system that does the heavy lifting for you, that's exactly what the EasyS method does. So first and foremost, we always start with innovative gap methodology because ultimately that's what's going to drive the success of everything else we do. Similar to how we talked about how the content strategy is the key that unlocks all the other pieces, it's that blueprint to everything else. The innovative gap methodology is the blueprint to everything that we do. This drives your messaging, your positioning, your marketing, your sales, and even the way you deliver your offer because now you have a methodology that fully encompasses the gravity of the work you do and ultimately the what drives the success of how you do it. This is how our clients are able to charge 5 to 10 times more for their services because they truly have a market of one and a methodology that innovates the industry in a way that nobody else can. Now, once you have that methodology, we apply that within your marketing and sales systems as well as your delivery system. So, that second piece of the puzzle is what we call our bingeable sales system. We use a dual lane approach to how we're supporting your clients to make the fastest and most effective decisions possible using our bingeable sales system. So, similar to today, how I shared with you how our content system uses this bingeable effect to get people make decisions using compounding process, our sales system does the same. So we're supporting people both at the top of the funnel by allowing people to quickly make decisions when they're ready, but also using our content systems to support people who may not have been approached for their specific buying trigger and allows them to do that. So we're taking dual approaches, allowing you to create better conversions and faster conversions without the need to constantly be dependent on more leads. And the third and final step of the easiest method is what we call results and retention. So ultimately, what this looks like is imagine that you're working one to one or in a group process. We don't want your clients to be constantly dependent upon you in order to create that success. Having your methodology applied within your delivery systems means that your clients know exactly what steps they need to be taking throughout the process in order to get results even faster. That means that you're getting your clients results with less time and less effort from your part, and you're getting clients who rant and rave about your services to anyone that they meet, ultimately allowing you to create pure profit in your business because you can do less marketing because you have a healthy stream of referrals and clients who want to stick with you for the rest of their lives. Now, this is exactly why the ECS method is such a powerful tool in being able to create a truly profitable and scalable business that isn't fully reliant on you. So, if you want to learn how we can apply the ECS method within your business, I want to invite you to the next steps because why wouldn't I? If I have the opportunity to support you in bringing your business to the masses and being able to create a highly successful, highly scalable, and highly profitable business, why wouldn't I? So, if you're ready to take that next step and learn about how we can apply the ECS method within your business, I want to invite you to book a growth optimization call. This call is done directly with me where you and I will sit down, we'll go through what your client acquisition looks like. I'll share with you exactly where I see the biggest opportunity points and how the easiest method can be applied to your business to help you to get leads to sell themselves using the Netflix effect. So you can book your call right now at easyesleads.com/call. But if you want to learn a little bit more about how the easiest method works to get leads to sell themselves, head on over to easyesleads.com. And as always, we love and appreciate when you like, subscribe, and share this episode with a friend. And until next time, here's to keeping it real.